I liked the element of helping people and watching people improve. Not just physically but also mentally. It's not just me. You see this with a lot of people who have had sort of success on social media, that it hasn't just been an overnight success. My parents, my mum in particular, was very, very adamant on me and my sister getting the best possible diet that we could, and we wouldn't get sweets. It's interesting, right? Because we wouldn't get sweets during the week. Tracking is the last thing that they would probably want to be doing.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Breaking the Cycle. Today, I have with me a very exciting guest. I know I've said that before, but this one, I'm a bit of a fangirl of. So I truly, and also he's emotional eating approved. Let me just say that. I have with me Graeme Tomlinson. Some of you may know him as the fitness chef, and I can't wait to share with you his journey and why he does what he does. So let's get into it. Hi, Graeme.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Honestly, I just want to get into it with you. Like, I just want to know all about you. So before we get into who you are, what you do, and your fun videos, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I guess I got into the fitness industry about 10 years ago. I actually used to play semi-pro cricket
Really?
when I
Oh,
was
that's
growing up.
interesting.
So that was kind of what I wanted to do until I reached the point where I discovered I wasn't good enough, and that was sort of early to mid 20s.
Yeah.
And because we did a lot of strength and conditioning work in the gym, I didn't really want to work in an office or anything like that. So the natural progression for me was to become a personal trainer. And so I did that for 3 or 4 years, and then progressed into the sort of online world of Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and creating online platforms and content. And yeah, that's how it kind of all started. That's going back to sort of 2013. I think I qualified as a personal trainer.
Amazing. And how'd you like personal training?
Yeah, to be honest, I liked the element of helping people and watching people improve. Not just physically but also mentally.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of success with clients, which is just why I guess you do it. But in terms of a career, I always knew that there was going to be a ceiling with that in terms of income, but also time. And there's only so many hours in the day, and I knew that to progress things more, I could probably help even more people if I could create something online, which could be sort of scaled. And that's, I guess, why I started posting stuff on Instagram pretty much to start with. But the funny fact is, with Instagram now, obviously have 1.8 million followers on there, but I think I've done 3,200 posts around about. The first 2,000 posts that I did on there, virtually unseen.
That's
Nobody
amazing.
really liked them.
And people need to know that, right? Because they would look at someone like you, your profile, and be like, oh, yeah, this guy had it. What kept you going for 2,000 posts?
Insanity, maybe. I honestly don't know. But it's not just me. You see this with a lot of people who have had sort of success on social media, that it hasn't just been an overnight success. They've posted for maybe 2, 3, 4 years. And it's that drive to kind of want to be successful that's probably kept them going. And eventually, if you do keep going, you will stumble across the thing that will be successful for you. And fortunately for me, it was for 2 or 3 years, I was posting recipe images of food that I was eating, basically saying, this is what I'm eating. I wasn't even giving the recipe to people, so why would they even engage with it? And then one day, I noticed people were doing infographics and comparisons, so I did one. And I think it was like a fruit smoothie compared to a can of Fanta. And there was obviously less sugar in the Fanta. And I was just saying, look, people always demonize soft drinks as being, high in sugar, which a lot of them obviously are. But this smoothie, which is obviously nutritious, you've got some benefits, but it's actually got twice the amount of sugar as this Fanta. And people's minds were blown. And I was like, wow, it can be this simple. So for the next few years, I was sort of, building my first million followers on Instagram just from the infographics.
The post that caught my eye was the avocado on toast and Nutella on toast. That's when I found your page, right? Because I was mind blown. I was like, wait a minute. I could be sitting here right now. I love avocado. I know Instagram loves avocado for some reason, but I could be sitting here right now having Nutella on toast. And I actually went because I think that post it went viral if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it went on BuzzFeed and everything. And it's just the funny thing about that is I went down to a supermarket, bought a loaf of bread, jar of Nutella, and an avocado, and was in my kitchen spreading it. Took the photos, put them in the post, and it goes out to basically everyone.
Yeah, it was
It just went
crazy.
totally viral. Everybody was sort of talking about it. A lot of people sort of outraged because they didn't really understand the post. A lot of people kind of their mind was blown, like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But there was something that you said that I think was so crucial. Yeah, it's about, keep the belief to keep going and just keep going, but also belief in what you do, right? Because you knew at the end of the day that I am doing something different that majority are not doing, but I feel like I have something here. Did you realize that as you were doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. No one's ever actually said that to me before, but I'm like, that's exactly what was going on because I think a lot of people on social media try and go with trends to be successful without sticking to the thing that's really sort of true to them. Um, and for me, the message was sort of very simple. I'm kind of like yourself, very balanced in terms of nutrition, evidence based. And then eventually one day you discover a mode whereby you can communicate it effectively with people. So I wasn't doing that for, 3, 4 years. And then eventually I found a way where I could communicate it visually on Instagram. And the message that I had all along was actually coming out because people were enticed to sort of look at the images and read the caption.
Yeah, I would say because it takes a lot of drive to when people are saying, oh, just let that go, hit it in the gym, show them your abs, show them a couple things that you're eating and go from there. Were you ever tempted to go down that route?
I was doing that sometimes. Yeah, I was doing really pointless posts like buying new wrist wraps for overhead press or bench press or whatever, and I just say these are my new wrist wraps. It's like,
Yeah.
why would anybody kind of like that? And there'd be the occasional six pack post, and I'd happily admit I'd be doing that in a sort of narcissistic way to say, look what I've achieved, and this is kind of what you could maybe look like. But it's not very useful, really.
I mean, I'm guilty of it as well. I remember once early on, I did watch me fit into this dress in 21 days, And mind you, a week before, the dress was still a little bit tight. I'm like, shit, what am I gonna do? I ended up fitting into it in not the best way possible, but I think I went to that transition realizing, wow, this is so not me. But I think it makes you who you are, makes you so unique, and the fact that you stuck through it. I'm also curious to know your relationship with food growing up as a child. What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, it's interesting to look back on. So my parents, my mum in particular, was very, very adamant on me and my sister getting the best possible diet that we could. She would kind of make bread from scratch, and we wouldn't get sweets. It's interesting, right? Because we wouldn't get sweets during the week, and if we were caught at school, sort of, I don't know, getting them off mates or whatever, we would get punished for it and stuff. So, but the thing was, at weekends we were allowed like 3 or 4 sweets. So it's almost like, but with best intentions, sort of binge eating.
Yeah.
And so, fortunately for myself, I didn't really develop any of that going into adulthood. But yeah, you could see how that might have happened. Yeah, I think up until I sort of became more educated in nutrition in my early mid-20s, I would be thinking all the same things that a lot of people think today in terms of certain foods being good, certain foods being bad, without understanding the context of your overall diet. So I remember I would be eating like half a loaf of bread thinking it was healthy back in sort of when I was 17, 18, but at the same time I was avoiding chips because I wanted to be an athlete, a professional cricketer, and they don't eat chips, but I'll smash 1,500 calories worth of bread instead. It's just stupid stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how did your diet evolve from being a cricketer to then going into personal training? Were they things that you implemented or excluded as well?
Not especially. I think maybe the start of my personal trainer career would be slightly more regimented in terms of not really having many sort of what you would call ultra processed foods or sweets or meals out and things like that. But I think as I developed, I kind of understood the power of sort of balance in the diet as well. And so in terms of my diet, today I'm very much still keen on having it as nutritious as possible. And, because I've studied food for so long, I can kind of almost eyeball energy values of certain foods, or how much protein's in it, how much fiber's in it, obviously the nutritional quality of it. So I'm kind of fortunate from that aspect now that I can kind of go to a supermarket and just go shopping in 15 minutes and not have to look at labels and things like that. But that's because it's my career, I guess. So for somebody who's not really got a career in that industry, it does take a bit of effort to learn about food and what's in it and what you're eating.
So it becomes second nature to you, right? I bet you can see, because sometimes people ask me, the biggest question is, Natasha, do you still track? Which is, it's calories in, calories out. And I've seen you've talked about that so many times. And I tell them, no, I don't. And sometimes they'll just sit there and be like, oh, but you make us track? And I was like, yeah, but I've maintained my weight now for close to 15 years, right? I can look at chicken breast and tell you that's 34 grams of protein. I can look at steak and say, oh, I need a leaner. Like, I know it for so long. Every so often I will, just to kind of, coming from a binge eating background, my portion sizes can get distorted. But what are your thoughts on tracking calories in, calories out?
I'm the same as you. I've never tracked, which people might have, their minds might be blown at that, because not that I advocate it, I'm just saying, look, you can do this and it's an effective tool if you want to gain or lose weight. So yeah, I think it depends on the individual. I think if somebody is coming from a background of disordered eating or eating disorders, then it's very much, I guess, tracking is the last thing that they would probably want to be doing. But at the same time, what I sometimes get feedback from my content, which does have calorie values and protein values of food with people who are recovering from eating disorders, is the educational element of knowing what's in certain foods actually a bit of a relief and a bit of a help, because a lot of emotional eating issues and eating disorders are obviously mental health issues as well, and sometimes they're not logical. So the more logic you can sometimes put in can actually help people understand. But it's a fine balance, because you can go too far the other way. And there's lots of different forms of eating disorders and disordered eating, because for one person, tracking calories or my content in general would be extremely triggering. It depends what's going on. But for another person, it might be extremely helpful. And I get that feedback a lot. There's been posts I've put up where someone has commented, this is triggering my eating disorder, but somebody else with an eating disorder is saying this is extremely helpful. So it just shows the kind of the difference. It's not a kind of one fits all.
Yeah. No, I agree. I absolutely agree. I actually refer my clients to your page, to give them that. Your infographics, God, they're the best, right? Because they are so descriptive, and someone can actually see them side by side and say, oh, wow, that actually makes sense, I'm a firm believer in flexible dieting. Like I'm a firm believer in that. I think any form of restriction makes us want it even more. If I tell you right now, don't think about a gray elephant, you're going to think about a bloody gray elephant, right? So I follow that philosophy. And I think if you look at what happened even when you were a child with your mom and the sweets, right? It's like, oh, you can't have any sweets during the week, but then on the weekend it's like, give it to me, right? So I completely agree with you. When you were coaching your clients, were you having nutrition talks with them, and what was kind of going on with them as far as your dieting approaches with them and things of that sort?
Yeah, a lot of, all of them. Yeah, because I would maybe get 1 to maybe 3 hours a week with them at push in the gym, and they've got all this other time at home where that's where they're gonna succeed or fail or stay the same. So yeah, there was a lot of chats with nutrition and a lot of kind of struggles with clients who just didn't want to listen.
Yeah.
We were chatting about it earlier. People want to kind of spend money to solve a problem, and sometimes they will think, I'll pay for a dietitian or a personal trainer, and that's it, it'll solve it without having to actually do the work behind the scenes. So I guess the advice per client would have been different each time, but I had a range of clients who, you give them advice and they would go away and you would just have to say something once and that would be ingrained, and they would probably 6 months later have succeeded and have progressed really well. But I've also had clients whereby you just smash your head against a brick wall and you keep kind of saying things and they just don't want to take it on board.
Yeah.
I think the biggest success story I ever had was a guy who came who was 67 at the time. Arthritis, type 2 diabetes, 2 partial knee replacements. Arthritis in one of his shoulders. So in terms of what he could do in the gym, it was extremely limited. And in the consultation, I was even saying to him, look, we're going to give this a go, but it might not be something that is going to be beneficial long term in the gym, at least because of your mobility issues and pain as well.
Yeah.
So he ended up being my client until I stopped doing personal training, so maybe 4 years. So by the time he was 71, within 6 months he'd reversed his type 2 diabetes. Wow. And within maybe 18 months, he'd gone from rack pulling a 20 kilo barbell to 210 for a 1 rep max.
That's
with 2 partial knee replacements. And so the nutrition kind of side of it for him was almost to the point where I didn't really have to say much to him, because I guess at that stage in his life, his diet was kind of so ingrained. But I think it was something like for breakfast, he would sometimes always have a fry up, which in the UK is like bacon, sausages,
and beans,
eggs,
and
beans,
things,
all this kind of stuff. Switching from that to oats was the only advice I gave him. That's the only nutritional change that we made. But he lost, I think it was something like maybe 4 stone or something in the first 2 years. And then he just sort of maintained from there and was sort of building strength. But yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, that's magnificent. Wow,
It was amazing.
I love when I hear stories of people, especially in their 60s or 70s, that think, you know what, this is it. I'm just gonna take it for what it is. What do you think it was when it came to your connection with him? Because I'm sure he's tried things in the past. I'm sure after having 2 knee replacements and things of that sort, because I also believe it boils down to the person. What do you think that connection was for you, for him?
I think it was a social side of it as well, and that he looked forward to the sessions because, we would chat about things like football, sports, so we had that in common. So he would look forward to coming regardless of what he had to do. But to give credit to him, he seemed to just have a amazing appetite for progressing even at that age. I don't think he'd joined a gym in his life before, but he always said he'd wanted to. So it was almost like 67 years building up of finally being able to go and do it. I think he retired a couple of years before. But it's almost like mates in there, just chatting. And then they'd be like, okay, go and do your set. He'd do it. And then we would just start chatting about sort of other things.
Oh, that's amazing.
Obviously, the first couple of months we'd be chatting about nutrition and making changes here or there. But then after that, you're almost just like having a friendly relationship.
Yeah, that's something you'll remember for life, that's for sure.
But I think that's what kind of motivated him to keep coming back. It was almost like I actually meet him every sort of few months to go for a walk in my town.
Do you? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's because obviously his journey was just so spectacular. And when I stopped personal training, I felt a little bit kind of guilty. Because he had to go and join a gym by himself, and he didn't get the interaction. So yeah, we still keep in touch, which is good.
Yeah. Can I ask, why did you stop personal training?
So I stopped it before COVID. I think it was maybe 2019, 2020. So we had to stop it during COVID, but it kind of came at a good time for me anyway, because at that point I think I'd started the building of the website, which is now my app. So that was the kind of end game, and I was just kind of waiting for a good time to leave the personal training. By that time, I only had maybe 7-8 clients because I didn't really need the income from it. So it was just becoming a little bit too much in terms of time and having to be there at certain times every week for clients, and I kind of wanted to build something bigger, if that makes sense. But I do still miss like the interaction.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear. That's my biggest fear. I mean, people always tell me you're going to cap out with one-on-one coaching, and I know I can feel it at times. My biggest fear is I'm going to miss out on that interaction. And I always feel like I'll keep maybe two or three. I don't know. I feel like I would, but I completely understand that. So you went from coaching, and now I want to get into, I don't even know where to start. You've done so much, right? Like, should we go into books
Oh, yeah.
first, or should we go into what came first, the books or the app?
The books.
The books. So let's please go
yeah.
into your books. So I know you've written books on weight loss, taking the madness out of weight loss, and things of that sort. So tell me a little bit about what were the intentions for the books? Some of them bestsellers as well, right? So talk to me a little bit about the books, please.
Yes, the books. Done 3 of them. The first one that came out. So yeah, as the Instagram was building, I kind of thought to myself, well, this could work in a book. You know, image-wise, it could be a kind of infographic book. So yeah, I reached out to a literary agent in London just off the cuff. I Googled them, and then they said, come down for a meeting, and went down there. I think I was on about 200k followers at the time, but it was building quite rapidly. A few months later, there was a book fair in London, so I had interest from Penguin, kind of pretty much all the leading publishers, and it went to a bidding war, and then eventually we went with one, and 3 books from there. So 3 books in 2 years technically got published.
Amazing. And what was the differences between the 3 of them?
So the first one was, like I said, they're very picture orientated, and even contains some of the infographics from my Instagram.
Oh, amazing.
With little captions. It was called The Infographic Guide to Losing Weight. So it's Eat What You Like and Lose Weight for Life was the title, which is kind of a bit clickbaity because obviously, you know, we need a little bit of direction with what we're eating. But the second book was a recipe book, which was lower calorie versions of your favorite foods.
Oh, nice.
So things like pizzas, burgers, and just making really subtle changes, like in a sandwich using low-fat mayo instead of regular mayo, just the calorie savings, but still making the volume high and the taste good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the third one?
Yeah, lose weight without losing your mind. So I wanted that. So that was more of and that was an audiobook as well, which I narrated, which was quite enjoyable actually.
Did you really? I always wondered how does that process go? Did you enjoy it? It was you did it
It was
yourself.
me, yeah.
Oh, great.
So the first 5 minutes, my voice is like quivering and shaking, and that's the clip you get on Amazon, which is annoying. So
no way. They didn't
people
cut
probably,
it out or edit it?
people probably play it and think, Jesus, I'm not going to watch this, but or listen to this. But yeah, I actually quite enjoyed reading it back.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that was more towards the kind of your relationship with food, strategies to stay on track and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then we transition now to the app, which I want to know all about. I want to go as far as what made you think about the app, who was the kind of audience you were trying to attack, and just tell us about it.
So the app is a very boring answer in the case that I just want everybody to use it, but like the big tracking apps, I want it to eventually compete with them, like a general population tracking tool that's self-sufficient. Users can use it. It's not a program, it's not a diet plan. There's bits of advice in there for me with coaching videos and certain things, but basically create an app where the user can just track their own diet, whatever it is. You know, it could be a flexible dieting. You know, if they want to do things like keto, vegan, whatever, they can just do it on my app if they want to do it.
Amazing.
But it's been a long process. So it started out, apps are very expensive. So
yeah, I heard.
It started out as a website, which we made into a progressive web app, which kind of looks like an app on your phone, but it's a browser without the URL. So it's like an app experience. But you don't get to put that on the app stores, right? It's just a website.
So is that where it's transitioning into now? Okay.
So January 2024 finally launched on both Google and Apple app stores. So it was maybe 18 months worth of development for that.
I can imagine. How did you condense all of that. Do you come from a business background, by the way?
No.
Yeah. And so I'm listening to you speak in how you've transitioned, because for me, I don't come from a business background. I did do business admin as well as a minor in university, but everything, it can be so overwhelming. Which path should I go? So how, number one, condense all that you know and all that you've done into an app form to make it sellable and scalable as well.
Yeah, I'm still sort of
Figuring that out.
figuring it out. I think the biggest challenge for building an app is getting the team right.
Oh, yeah.
So the cheaper option to start with is to go with an agency to build an app, or maybe even get a white labeled app which is templated to your business. And that's fine, but you can't really adjust it to make it exactly what you want, which is what I wanted to do. So mine's entirely. So the temptation is to go with the cheaper option, which is an agency to start with, which will kind of give you a quote. Yeah, I didn't have the best experience with that. So fortunately, I'm in a place now where I've got my own full-time software engineer leading it and someone else.
How was that hiring process?
So yes, I used a consultancy to do that, which cost a bit of money, but I'm so glad that we kind of did that. It was a couple of months worth of interviews, but totally got the right guy, and he is absolutely fantastic. The communication is the key, I think, with a lot of these apps that are getting built, in terms of the time it takes to code, the time it takes to add new features. Communication is so important, so you don't have to keep going back and changing things or fixing bugs, etc. But that's the boring side of it. The exciting side of it is obviously thinking of new features of the app. So it started out basically as a meal planner. So you have a database of 2 million.
Just to kind of build your meals as you go along.
Yeah, so there'd be lots of recipes on there that people could put in their meal plan. They would have targets when they sign up, depending on their goals. So they'll have calories, protein. If they want to track carbs and fats, they can do that. They can also sign up to the app and not track anything if they don't want to, but they can still benefit from the recipes and stuff. Then we added a database just for UK and USA foods, so 2 million foods.
That's big enough
in
in
supermarkets,
itself. Yeah.
So you can track, Nutella or a Mars bar, avocado, adjust the quantities. And then we've now added lots of new things like a period tracker, which it works really well. So it can predict your menstrual cycle and your period the next month.
Yeah.
Coaching videos. We've just added an exercise section whereby the focus isn't really on burned calories, it's more on achievements and PRs. So if you're going to the gym, how much weight are you lifting? We're kind of focusing on that as the achievement as opposed to burning calories.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a good gamification element there as well to keep people motivated as they go. Do they get to mix and mingle as a community?
So we're about to put a community section in there. Yeah. Amazing. It's almost like you're reading my mind.
Yeah, because I could see that aspect of it working as well. Because I have a community as well for my emotionally. It's primarily for women, but that community element is kind of what brings them together the most, and that sounds amazing. How do you think of the features? So yeah, it's a good question. We've got a board that the three of us sort of look at. And I guess looking at other apps as well, what's successful there, what the demand is, what we can do slightly differently to make it more enticing. Yeah.
And then we sort of take it from there, because things like the period tracker, there's a massive app which begins with F that tracks. And we were looking at that app and we were thinking, well, half the population between the age of whatever it is up until 55 is they're going through this every month, and to have that on our app, they can track their fitness journey, but also just have peace of mind to check in with their menstrual cycle, how they're feeling, learn about the different 4 phases of the cycle and things like that. We were kind of like, that would be a really good tool, and looking at the usage of that since it got launched, it's been great. Really?
Yeah, so beneficial. I was just telling a trainer this morning, I said, oh, wow, I could lift so much heavier this week. And she said, she told me something about the phase of my period that I was in. And I said, you're spot on, because I felt the most weakest last week, and it helped so much. So I've tracked it now for almost I think 8 months. What a difference! So yeah, that's such a great add-on. And how the majority men, women? Look, what's the ratio at the moment?
On the app, it's 70% women. So it kind of goes with the Instagram demographic in some ways, which is about 73 to 27
Right.
for women.
Amazing.
So that's another thing to consider in terms of branding and things like that as well.
Absolutely. I want to go back to your Instagram posts and what you showcase. I don't know if anyone's seen them. We're going to put a few of them up here right now, but they're so informative. They're so funny, right? And but at the same time, it's not received well by everyone, and that's expected as you grow the numbers that you carry. I think across all your platforms, you're well close to three, if not past that as
I
well.
think, yeah, maybe 3 or 3.5.
Yeah. And so what are some of the comments that you get, the most gruesome ones, and how do you deal with them?
Yeah, it's a mix. So a lot of the criticism comes with people just not agreeing with what you're saying or misunderstanding what you're saying in the posts. So, it's, do I take my time to kind of try and educate them? Are these people just going to always want to just disagree, or are they going to take on board what I kind of say? Most of them are that. Sometimes you get sort of personal attacks on physical appearance or whatever. I think I did a funny one on gym phrases that need to die. And the fact that I wasn't kind of like, looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, a lot of people were just like, you shouldn't be making this video. You're not, you don't have enough muscle or stuff like that. So you get a lot of criticism that's just pointless as well. You just have to kind of take it on the chin and ignore it, or sometimes just write a funny comment back. But I guess you probably get the same amount of comments.
Oh yeah, it can be a lot.
Yeah, I guess you're putting this out to the world and anybody could see it. If it goes viral, you're talking about millions of views, and a lot of people they'll take information differently.
Yeah.
Or they'll have a different mindset when they're absorbing that information, or their education is maybe not as good as it could be, and they'll take it in a different way. So it could be anything.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when I had my first video go viral and there was a lot of love, but then you started seeing the other comments and it's like, oh, she's lost weight, but she's still fat. Or, no wonder, this was the funniest one. No wonder she used to eat a lot. She looks like she has a big mouth. And I was like, what is going on here? But, it took me a while because you said I just take it on the chin. It took me a while to get to the point where it doesn't phase me anymore. I've actually turned off my Instagram and TikTok notifications because there's no point. But how did you react when you first, obviously, when you were growing after the 2000 post and all these were coming in? How were you reacting or responding in the beginning?
The first, I think it might have been the first post that got a lot of attention. I got inevitable comments that were negative. So I just couldn't believe what they were saying. I didn't understand why they didn't understand how simple my post was. Why were they disagreeing? Why were they trying to be argumentative? That was my first experience of that. So I would be replying to them, trying to work out what was going on. And, there'd be about 15 comments in the thread. And then I worked out in time that actually there's no point. And it sounds easy to say, oh, just switch off and don't reply, because like you said there, in your viral video, you got a lot of amazing comments, and you maybe get one comment that's negative and you focus on that one, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible. It's kind of human nature to focus on something that's threatening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say it's almost just like you get used to anything in life. You get used to something, or maybe get bored of it in time. You just get bored of negative comments, and you're like, oh, okay. And like you say, maybe even not even looking at comments is a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I have this philosophy, a post and ghost, right? So I post and then that's it, I'm out. And then if there's a Q&A or something that I've put up, but you're so right. I mean, you always focus on that one. And because come from binge eating and a weight loss background, then the whole body confidence thing gets triggered in its own way. But you really have to be, especially where you are and where you're heading, you have to be thick-skinned. Like, you have to be thick-skinned. Were you always, or did that develop over time?
No, both in some ways. Like, you almost teach yourself to be thick-skinned. I think it's slightly different with our content, because I guess a lot of mine is just talking about food and things like that, so not necessarily talking about personal things like binge eating, body confidence, whereas if I was to get a negative comment, it's probably like, you don't know what you're talking about, or this is a load of rubbish, get yourself to school or something. Whereas your negative comment might be, like you said there, about your appearance, which is a lot more potentially damaging. And that's why I found when I got a couple of comments like that as well, it did kind of dig in a little bit more than some of the other comments. Yeah. So I totally understand the post and ghosts, just in terms of a protective way of kind of getting through.
Yeah.
But are you tempted to sometimes look at the comments in time?
Sometimes I'll look at the comments and I'll say, you know what, and especially the ones that reach out for help. So I don't know if you get this on your post. I see a lot of appreciation, but sometimes I'll get cries for help. And those ones I flag, and I ask my team to flag them immediately, because people struggling with eating disorders and emotional eating, it's usually behind closed doors, right? That we're eating big amounts of food. So those ones I immediately, and it's me just reaching out and saying, look, I can help you in these variety of options. Even let's hop on a call, because I don't want that person to feel that they're alone or go down a spiral of not being in control of themselves. So yeah, but do you get messages like that every so often?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mostly in DMs. So a lot of people like to be private with these kind of things, don't they, in message. Unfortunately, don't see like all DMs, because the way they get categorized these days, it's impossible to kind of, it used to just be one feed of DMs, which was easy to keep track of, but now you're kind of, but yeah, I do have a look at them and try and reply to as many as possible. And if it is something as severe as, eating disorders or emotional eating, I'm kind of saying to them, look, I'm glad my content is helping. If my content's helping you, please keep watching it. If it ever doesn't, then, unfollow if you get too triggered by something.
Way. Yeah.
And also the fact that a lot of people are asking me for, help and advice, and I'm not the best person for that. You probably need somebody who specializes in helping people with binge eating or disordered eating. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing for me to do. So maybe refer them to yourself.
I take them gladly.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely amazing. I want to, on that note, also get into diet culture. It's something that I talk about 100%. Sometimes people don't even know that it exists. So when I say the term diet culture, what do you have to say for it?
For diet culture, I guess it could cover a lot of things. It could cover all the different diet camps that are out there, people attached to their worth to a particular diet, like carnivore or keto or paleo or vegan. It's like they have their kind of self-worth based on that diet, and that is their life, almost like a religion in some ways. I kind of think about that, but also the diet culture side of things, demonizing certain foods, and we were chatting about it before. I think you were saying someone was criticizing oats.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it's come to now, is every single food that we eat out there will have a microscopic element of it which could potentially be seen as negative. So for example, in apples, the pips contain cyanide, but the dose is so small that you could eat 100 apples and you'd be completely fine. But people will say don't eat apples because they contain cyanide, and we know that cyanide is completely toxic substance that is used to, kill people. So yeah, things are often taken out of context, and that's where diet culture sort of stands today, I think.
Is that one of your main elements when you are putting out your content, to break down components of diet culture?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think I wouldn't have this brand or persona if diet culture didn't exist.
Absolutely.
Because the majority of my content is basically trying to correct it or put it into some sort of logical context for people to relax and understand the reality of what they're eating, instead of the hype that they've maybe heard or seen in clickbait headlines.
And what would be the biggest topic that usually gets a lot of views, a lot of likes, when you're trying to break it down from diet culture?
I would it's probably still artificial sweeteners in soft drinks. It's the most there was something that came out a couple of years ago that it is the most talked about nutritional subject online.
What is the data there when it comes to artificial sweeteners?
Yeah, so there are different types of artificial sweeteners. Aspartame or aspartame, however you pronounce it, is the most talked about one, but it's also the most researched sweetener out there. And there's a lot of various claims that it will cause cancer, it will make you fat, it will cause diabetes and all these kind of things, but there's no data really to support anything like that. There might be individual studies on rodents to support the fact that, okay, some rodents that consumed these sweeteners developed blood cancers, but we're not rodents. So it's like, yeah, it's, if you saw that in a headline, you would be scared if you weren't educated to know that actually the biology of a rat or a human being is completely different.
Absolutely. I mean, we look different. Hello. Like that's nuts. And you know, the most common, you're so right about it being the most Googled and the most talked about, because the most common question I get asked from clients, from people online is, well, can I have a Diet Coke? Is that a bad thing? Oh, Natasha, I had 3 Diet Cokes. That's so bad. And I was like, no, it isn't. If when I first started on my weight loss journey, I was having Diet Cokes instead of having chocolate bars. It's the lesser of the two evils, right? But then they're like, yeah, but oh, it takes away the sweetness, but it's so bad for you. I'm like, but would you rather have a Diet Coke or would you rather have the 3 chocolate bars that you were having at 4 p.m.? The Diet Coke. Then go with the Diet Coke.
And that is good that is coaching. That's what it should be, not extreme sort of advice. And you're totally right. Two people could be completely different. One person could be drinking, regular Coke or any soft drink, thousands of calories per day, potentially, lots of sugar. They switch that to one with 0 calories, 0 sugar. For them, it's fantastic. If someone's drinking water all day, and then you're like, switch to Diet Coke, you're like, well, okay, in terms of energy balance, it's the same, but actually, probably best just to do what you were doing before, because water is probably going to be better all round than drinking heaps of artificial sweeteners.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's things like that. It's things, and this is why I love your page, because it breaks down those elements. It's like, oh yeah, I can have 3 Diet Cokes instead of 4 chocolates. It's a lesser of 2. It's even lesser in calories if my goal is weight loss. I think people are trying to combine 5, 6, 7 things in once. Oh, I don't want to be poisoned, but I also want to lose a lot of weight. I don't want to do this. And I think I need to watch my lactose intolerance as well, and all of that coming up. And is there, when you're looking, because I want to say this, it is real, right? It all exists. There is lactose intolerance. There is, we've got to watch aspartame in those high amounts. But there's so much noise out there. And how do you make it make sense?
Yeah, it's try to make it as simple as possible. But the one about lactose intolerance is there's been claims that dairy or dairy causes inflammation. So a lot of people avoid dairy, but actually, if you look at the research in it, it's just that dairy can cause inflammation for people who are lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
So if you're allergic to something, it will cause inflammation, and that's it. So you have to be allergic to it for that to happen. But the way it's portrayed is that dairy is just inflammatory to everybody, but actually
it's not.
It's not the
I
case.
mean, the next popular one when this whole phase came out was gluten-free, right? Did you find that? Because I've seen it in some of your posts as well. And I remember an uncle of mine who struggled with weight at the time, and he was eating these big box of cookies, and he's like, "Oh, it tastes so good for something that's gluten-free." And like he finished the whole thing, and he's like, "But it was gluten-free. It's good." I'm like, "Gluten-free doesn't mean sugar-free. It doesn't mean calorie-free." And I think that's where your content comes in and says, "Hey, you could have had a regular bag of cookies and probably been better for you and enjoyed it."
Exactly. Yeah, and probably be in the same sort of situation. I think a lot of it comes down to the marketing behind. A lot of brands are now saying, "Look, we do this in gluten-free," and people just assume, "Oh, that must be a good thing. So gluten-free must just be healthy for everybody." But actually, unless you're allergic to gluten, gluten is perfectly fine. And as you're saying there, gluten-free bread isn't much fun for most people, and people might be doing that, not really enjoying it, probably eating the same amount of calories as regular bread that they would enjoy more. They would be in a better mental place eating something that they enjoy. So it's yeah, a lot can be said for the marketing for a lot of these big brands that are kind of pushing gluten-free versions, which is great for people who are allergic to
Exactly.
gluten.
Is it celiac, right? You need to
Celiac,
have
yeah, yeah, celiac disease, and but yeah, I think a lot of it gets lost in translation.
Absolutely. I know I'm guilty of it because I ordered a gluten-free pizza once from one of the pizza joints here. I'm not going to say their name. And I know the crust they sent me wasn't gluten-free. It was supposed to be a cauliflower crust. It was low on calories. And so I called them and I was like, this was supposed to be a cauliflower crust. He's like, ma'am, it is. I was like, no, it isn't. And then he said, well, do you have celiac disease? And I was like, no. I shut the phone.
Put the phone
Yeah,
down.
because I was like, he's so right. Like, why am I making such a big deal? Okay, I'm going to be over my calories. I get that. But it was an eye opener for me at that point. You get kind of sucked into it at certain points, right? But no, I absolutely agree. And then when we look at the content you put out on a regular basis and in relation to your books and your apps, is there certain themes that you're going to be building on in the future on where we are and kind of where we're heading to? And there's a big topic that I'm going to talk to you about, and I know you know what it is, but is there certain newer topics that are coming about now heading into, let's say, AI and things of that sort?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the kind of balanced, flexible diet, everything in moderation, has been pretty well put together over the last 5 or 6 years. That everyone's kind of aware of it now, which is great, because before that it was a very extreme kind of all or nothing approach, demonizing foods, etc. Just seems to me that we seem to, like, collectively between all of us, have cracked that a little bit. So the social media space seems a little bit better from that point of view. But yes, like you're saying, this AI kind of generation of content that we're now coming up towards seems like it's going to be very difficult to know what's going to happen. Anything could happen. I've seen people in the industry who are, similar sort of message as us, being portrayed as pushing for, things like weight loss injections just from AI. And I don't know how they can legally protect themselves against that.
Yeah.
You don't know who's actually posting it. So yeah, I could honestly see a situation in a year or two's time where perhaps your content, you are seen as saying the opposite of what you actually
Absolutely.
advocate for, and the AI is so good and it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
How are people going to be able to differentiate who's the real Natasha or the fake
Absolutely.
one?
Yeah. I mean, I just seen an app on TikTok the other day that said, scan your body, let your trainer go. Like that was the promotion on the, let your trainer go and scan your body. We're going to be your trainer. And I was like, what? Like, what's just happened here? So, I mean, that's definite. And is that something you're thinking of when you're evolving the app over the next years?
Absolutely, AI is something that we're have to do and have to look at, and we're looking at a way of making it as easy for the user to use as possible. There's a lot of apps that scan pictures of food now and can predict the things like the calories and the protein and stuff in there, and they don't work. I mean, they might work for some foods. Like if you put a Snickers bar down, it'd be like, okay, yeah, we can predict that. We know what's in there. But what if you put, say, scrambled eggs down there? Will it be able to differentiate between 4 eggs or 4 eggs and cream and milk? Because they look the same.
Yeah.
So how can that app predict that? And I've tested 3 or 4 of them, and they always get it wrong. So we're looking at it and we're like, okay, we could do this, have a gimmicky element to the app, which seems like it's going to make the user's journey a lot more easy. They don't have to find foods, but they can just take a photo, but actually it's giving them the wrong information.
Absolutely.
So what we could do is have it, but have a part of the app where you can edit, is this correct or is it not?
Right, right.
And maybe change
I'm
it.
so happy you brought that up because I've noticed that the big apps have it, the feature on there. And I had one client say, Natasha, what do you think? I'm like, we won't know until we try. So we tried it, and she was having strawberries with some Greek yogurt and maybe chia seeds, something on the side. And it tracked it as pomegranate and then oats or something. It was completely off. But what I found it helpful is in those moments where we are outside. So something I always tell my clients, look, not every moment's going to be a tracking opportunity. You've got to be with with people around you and enjoy. But if weight loss is a goal for you and you want to make it take a picture, track it later. And so what tends to happen is then the app, if it's like a steak and potatoes and veggies, it just kind of tracks, it gives you the gist of it and it tracks it. So in those situations, it does help. And
Help.
yeah, in some
Yeah,
in some given
definitely.
point. Now I want to ask you the big question on injections. I do. This all the buzz right now at the moment. It has been for the past 2 years. I mean, my first client started talking to me about weight loss injections 4 years ago. And at that time, when she showed me the injections, my jaw like dropped. I didn't know something of that sort existed. Now, every second person that I have met, let's say even over the past week, is either on the injection or off the injection, Ozempic, Manjaro. Your thoughts?
Um, yeah, the boring answer again is depends on the individual, but you're going to get a wide spectrum of people that are going to want to use these injections or say benefit from them. And again, it's if somebody is morbidly obese or overweight and genuinely their health is under threat, these injections could be something which is going to prolong their life or make them, you know, avoid things like type 2 diabetes or whatever. So you're like, that's got to be a positive. But you're also going to get the other end of the spectrum where somebody is probably only, I don't know, 18, 19% body fat, but they have self-confidence issues. They want to have a six-pack. They want to be as lean as possible. Their friends are doing it, or their friends look a certain way, so they'll do it for that reason, which becomes extremely sort of unhealthy. And I think that's the problem with it at the moment. Um, so, yeah, it just depends. For me personally, getting to a society where people use injections instead of lifestyle to alter their physicalities, I don't think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Because how sustainable is it? You're going to do this for the rest of your life. As you say, when you come off them, it's almost like going on a crash diet in certain ways, because once you come off it, you haven't learned any habits or lifestyle behaviors to sustain what the goal that you want to achieve, if that's weight loss, which it will be for these injections.
Absolutely.
So you're probably going to have to go off. You might gain weight again, and then you go back on them, and it almost acts like that. But it depends on the individual. For some people, I think it could be effective, and for others, I think it could be almost like a crash diet mentality.
I mean, I agree with you. I've seen it do wonders. I've seen it do wonders for the people that have stayed at minimal baseline doses and incorporated good habits to build their way up. But the ones that said, "Oh, I'm feeling a little bit more hungry. Let me just up my dose. Let me just shorten my dose." Those are the ones that are really, really struggling on the other side. Um, I want to pick your personal training hat a little bit, because with the injections, if you're not working out, if you're not having enough protein, you're getting into a lot of muscle loss, right? Which people are, they're looking at the number at the scale dropping. They're looking at themselves leaner and they're like, oh my God, haven't looked this way in years, haven't felt this way in years, and thinking this is where I should be and be. And they're thinking that's right. And I get you're no longer struggling with obesity, but if you could please tell us the importance of, first of all, what's exactly happening to their body there with all that muscle being lost, and what are the downfalls?
Yeah, I mean, if you're losing muscle mass, you're stopping your body's ability to kind of burn more calories anyway. But not only that, it's also your quality of life, especially as we get older. If you're losing muscle mass, by the age of 60, 70, you might not even be able to kind of stand up easily. So the fact that people are almost attaching these injections to success or failure, I think is a huge problem with that. And I think it's one of these things that we might look back on in 20 to 30 years as, oh, that was the Ozempic phase where everybody sort of did this, because I think it'll get to a level where it's so unsustainable and borderline abusive in terms of the quantities people use them in, that it will start to become negative for everybody.
I think, in certain scenarios, I've been in rooms where their conversations have been around, oh, we're all going vacation. Well, going for a vacation next week, pack your Ozempic, like that's kind of what it's come down to. I can see it. And I too hope that this is a phase. I mean, it's moved from Ozempic to Mounjaro. It's going to move from Mounjaro eventually to the pill. So I think it's going to go through its phases. But do you see it dying down at all?
Um, I, I think I think it could start dying down if it comes in for criticism in terms of health impacts, which we don't. It has been very well researched, and it does seem very robust. But we don't know the long-term research of using it for decades. People have only been using it for 2-3 years. So yeah, after 10 years, what happens? That's being sort of skeptical on it.
Absolutely. The the primary cause, I think someone else was saying the other day, well, obesity is a disease. And I love your thoughts on that. Oh, the way you cringe there. I love that. I would love your thoughts because I do the exact look you made right now is exactly what I did. I'm like, listen, I can vouch for this. I was 145 kilos. What's your take on that entire statement?
A lot of people have a problem with the word obesity, but it's just a medical term. So it kind of is what it is, but it's not necessarily, in my view, a disease. It depends if we're using clinical terms or not. If somebody ends up being morbidly obese and it's one of the main reasons that they contract other diseases, which then leads to lower quality of life or even a fatal incident, then would you define it as a disease? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But I think the connotations of that word are pretty harmful,
Yeah.
especially for somebody who doesn't want to be in that physical state. So yeah, I would never ever sort of use that. I'm not
Absolutely.
sure about you.
I mean, this is what I've seen doctors out there saying, well, if someone had sickle cell or they had, they'd use an actual disease that people are struck, would you tell them not to take their meds? And because they're trying to promote Ozempic or Mounjaro as the med that fixes this disease. And being an obese person myself, I cannot resonate with that in no shape or form, right? Whether it makes the person sleep better at night on saying, yeah, okay, obesity is a disease, I need my medication. I don't know. I mean, I used this comparison once with a client. I said, she's like, oh, Natasha, but I needed the injection at that time. And I asked her for a moment, I said, who do you sound like right now? Right? And she's like, oh, like someone who needs to shoot up. I said, exactly that. Exactly.
The difference is you'll have medical conditions whereby you can only improve or it can only be managed through medication, whereas obesity or being overweight doesn't just have to be managed by medication. Obviously, lifestyle will be just as effective or maybe more effective mentally because you're building behaviors and long-term habits that are going to help you keep on track forever.
Absolutely.
Whether somebody does Ozempic forever, it might be completely fine, but we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. We'll wait
I mean,
and find out.
just the thought of injecting myself every so often with this is just, yeah, I would rather go for a run, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
If I was, obviously able to do that.
Yeah, and I think it becomes a way of life, I mean, you start small and kind of build habits from there. That's at least what worked for me. All right, so I love your take. I love your cringe. Guys, can we just highlight that cringe for the obesity is a disease part? But what's next? What's next for you, for the brand?
For me, it's very much focused on the app at the moment, and we've done a lot of work over the last 12 months, adding new features and working on them. And I think now it's a case of trying to get it out there to as many places as possible and just let people know that we sort of have it, and maybe committing more time and effort into marketing, not just building, to get it out there, because it's been out there for a while now. So it's a case of really making people aware that it is a nutrition tracking app, but it's probably a slightly more empathetic take on it, and it's not quite as kind of medical looking. We're trying to gamify it. We're trying to make it nice to use. So it's a mix of, yes, this is what you need to do to achieve your goal, whether it's weight loss, muscle gain, eating more nutrients, improving your relationship with food. This is what you need to do, but also you know, you're allowed to do whatever you want to do as well, but just trying to keep people informed. So we're trying to, for example, we've got like a sleep tracker, water tracker.
Oh, that's
We're
great.
going to add fiber, saturated fat, sugar, just so people can kind of keep an eye on their intake. But also, we're not saying, oh, if this chocolate bar has heaps of sugar, it doesn't mean, you know, you can't eat it. It's just, let's see what it looks like over the week instead of the day. So it's a more flexible approach. Because yeah, you can actually achieve your diet by failing every single day, technically. You know, if you had targets, say 2,000 calories per day for weight loss, you don't have to achieve that on any day. It's just the average that counts. So some days you could be slightly under, some days over. So we're very much trying to create that sort of message on the app, as opposed to every day you failed or you've won. We're kind of saying, look, you've done this, and this is what it looks like over the bigger picture, which is a little bit more useful, I think. But yeah, I think I just want to continue making the app as good as it can be and compete with some of the market leaders.
Absolutely.
Which is going to be tough. But they've been going for like 10 years. This has only been going for 18 months, so it'll take a bit of time.
It'll take time, but you sound like you have a great framework around it. That's what's important. And you have an amazing personal brand. I think that plays a huge approach. And on the personal brand front, what's next for you?
Yeah, I've had various sort of thoughts. It's a variety of things. Could do another book, but I don't think I'm in a place where I really am passionate about it and anything enough to do it, and I don't just want to go through the motions. I want it to be like really something that people need. Yeah, we could. I don't know. Honestly, lots of different ideas. I'll maybe update in a few months.
Well, we'll be keeping in touch.
Yeah.
I have a leaving tradition that I love guests to do, where you kind of leave behind some words of advice or anything that you feel would help my audience in particular, which is primarily anyone struggling with weight, struggling with emotional leaders. They're going to find your app so helpful, and I'm going to leave it in the description below where they can find it. But what would be some words of advice that you could leave them?
Yeah, I think these days we take a lot of our information from social media, don't we? It's very easy to slip into a habit of following certain accounts that aren't very helpful to us. Maybe the best thing to do is every month set a reminder on your phone and go through the followers. Not necessarily friends and family, unless you've started hating them or whatever, but accounts that you follow to achieve your goal. Monitor that every 30 days, I would say. Go through them, and if they're not serving you anymore, unfollow. If they trigger you, unfollow them. If they're still helpful, then obviously keep following. The algorithms these days are very different to what they were even 2 or 3 years ago. A lot of the content we see, in fact, 50% of the content we see now is from accounts that don't follow. So sometimes it's difficult to avoid triggering content. But you can go into, I know on Instagram, you can tap the 3 dots and say, I'm not interested in this, or don't show me this again. So just making sure you kind of do that, I think is key. Yeah, that would probably be my
That's
word.
great advice. That's absolute, like doing a complete detox every 30 days of your following list.
Yeah,
I think
cull, almost a cull.
Yeah,
of,
exactly. I
yeah.
definitely need that for sure. Thank you, Graeme. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be keeping in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.